On this day in 1994, Fergus McCann won control of Celtic from the Old Board. Without a ball being kicked, the 4th of March 1994 was one of the most momentous days in the history of Celtic Football Club, with Fergus McCann taking control from the family dynasties that had run Celtic for almost 100 years. There are adages from all parts of the world stating that family businesses are more often than not ruined by the grandchildren of their founders, such as the old Lancashire saying, "From clogs to clogs in 3 generations." In keeping the family business healthy, John L. Ward wrote in 1987, "The first generation builds the business, the second generation milks or harvests it, and the third generation must either auction what is left to the highest bidder or start all over again." The Old Celtic Board in 1994 certainly bore this out, with Chairman Kevin Kelly, a grandson of Celtic's first captain and one-time chairman James Kelly, without whom there would have been no Celtic as we know it. His son Robert Kelly would probably have run Celtic into the ground if he hadn't appointed Jock Stein as manager in 1965. For almost a century, control of Celtic had swung between the Kellys and the Whites, descendants of Tom White, a lawyer and newspaper director who replaced founding father John Glass on the board in 1906 and succeeded James Kelly as chairman in 1914. White's son Desmond replaced Robert Kelly as chairman in 1971, holding the position until his death in 1985, and appointed his son Christopher as a director in 1981. On Desmond White's death in 1985, Tom Grant was appointed to the board. He was a great-grandson of James Grant, a member of the original board in 1897 and builder of the ill-conceived Grant Stand. The families tied up control of Celtic between themselves with an agreement that no shares in the club would be sold to outsiders, with the board having the right to buy any shares that came up for sale. By 1994, Celtic was teetering on the brink of administration, with a board of directors who were miles out of their depth and had no idea how to compete with a big-spending, debt-fueled Rangers. They could be forgiven for their lack of business acumen, but their refusal to step aside and allow people with the vision and drive necessary to take the club forward will be forever a black mark against their names. After a long, drawn-out battle for control, the Old Board's hand was forced by the Bank of Scotland at the beginning of March 1994 when they demanded the club, £5 million overdrawn at the bank, made an immediate payment of £1 million or they would foreclose, with the inevitable result that Celtic would be put into administration. Celtic fan and shareholder John Keane was the man who stepped up to pay £1 million to stave off the threat of administration. He would later say, "Administration was unthinkable. It would have been a slur upon the name of the club." The crisis had been triggered by the collapse of the Old Board's pie-in-the-sky scheme to build a new stadium in Cambuslang, which they alleged was backed by the Swiss financing house Gefenor. Gefenor's immediate denial of any involvement destroyed the bank's trust in the board. Their demand for a £1 million payment was made in the full knowledge that Fergus McCann was waiting in the wings. McCann and Brian Dempsey negotiated their takeover of the club on the 4th of March 1994. The Daily Record reported the following day, "The greatest changes in the 106-year history of Celtic were put in place yesterday. It was the longest day for the Parkhead Club as a bitter boardroom battle was fought out behind the red brick frontage at Celtic Park. At the end, Fergus McCann, the Canadian millionaire who has been repeatedly turned down in his attempts to take power, came in from the wilderness. It was 98 days since the EGM which threw out his last bid to become the club overlord. But just after 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon, he swept up to Celtic Park in a red German car as a crowd of more than 100 who had braved the wind and rain all day chanted his name and applauded his arrival. 2 hours earlier, the other main rebel leader, Brian Dempsey, had arrived to receive the same adulation from the fans. "Brian is God," they shouted. Dempsey, a former director of Celtic, previously deposed in a boardroom coup, said, "The club is ours." It was Dempsey who would provide the most memorable moment of the day, announcing to jubilant fans and assembled pressmen from the steps outside the main stand, "The game is over, the rebels have won." The day saw the departures of Michael Kelly and Christopher White, the two main obstacles to change, ending forever their families' control of the club. While Kevin Kelly, Tom Grant, Jack McGinn and James Farrell remained, they were now peripheral figures. It wasn't all plain sailing, and there were as many downs as ups along the way, but the Bunnet now embarked on his tumultuous 5-year reign that ultimately saw a rejuvenated Celtic recapture the league championship after 10 long years and finally step into the modern business era in a brand new 60,000-seater stadium that would more than anything else put Rangers in the shadows. The ignominious end of the Kelly years should not take away from the fact that James Kelly, as much as anyone else, built Celtic. Fergus McCann, though, was without a doubt the man who took over and transformed what had effectively become a failed family business and saved Celtic.